Hello and welcome back to Movie Film Studios, the only podcast where two wannabe film studio executives shamelessly take the best ideas from the latest Hollywood trailers to create the half-baked blockbusters that you'd actually want to see. I'm Isaac.
And I'm AJ, and this week we craft intricate puppets that come to life and run amok after they become embroiled in a hilarious case of identity creation to the chagrin of some legendary Los Angeles cops. But before we get into something new, it's time for something pretty old as we check in on our last feature in Box Office Report.
I was going to say last week's release was the Turner Family Tarago, but I think some eagle-eyed viewers may have noticed that despite the fact that it was released in, the episode at least was released in January 2024, was actually recorded back in October 2019.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's no reason we can't check in and see how that project went. We had a couple of issues there securing the Tarago itself.
Yeah, we did. Now, as anyone knows who grew up in Australia, the Tarago was the quintessential vehicle for families, particularly large families, because it is a people carrier. It seats about 9 people. It's efficient, it's affordable, it's great. Now, I put it into a classified ad to try and get a authentic secondhand Tarago. I didn't want something that had been manufactured by a prop department. I didn't want Toyota to send us a brand new one.
We are all about that authenticity in our films. Like, it has to feel... I mean, anyone who grew up with friends or family friends or actually had the Tarago itself remembers the feel of it, remembers the look and feel of that vehicle, and you can't recreate that. It had to be authentic.
Yeah, half the panels have come from other Taragos that aren't the same color.
Yeah, mismatched doors.
Perfect. You could just mix and match. So I put an ad into the classifieds. Problem is, though, it somehow got out that classified ad had come from Movie Film Studios and wasn't just a prospective buyer looking for a secondhand car. Once they found out that was happening, some intrepid people put 2 and 2 together and realized that we were about to make a film starring the legendary Tarago. At that point, everything went haywire.
Artificially inflated economy. Now, I was just looking and I saw that the Tarago was manufactured from 1983 to 2019.
Yes.
The exact year that we decide to turn the Tarago into a classic film vehicle like the DeLorean and others that I can definitely name. Toyota decides to stop manufacturing as well. So also creating an artificial scarcity of that vehicle. And you run into these problems, right, where a vehicle gets to a certain age and it's, you know, either an antique or a classic, and there's all these reasons that, you know, depending on whether it's road legal or whatever, that it gets reclassified, and then you can sort of maybe justifiably see exponential spikes in its price. But there was just no reason for the Tarago's price to spike right when we wanted to buy one.
It was unbelievable. I remember you went to a couple of those classic car auctions, and usually they're filled with, you know, legitimate classic cars like you know, Aston Martins or old Jaguars or whatever. For some reason, the entire auction was just Taragos.
Full of Taragos. Going
the
for
prices.
And like in crazy auctioneer bidding as well. I bid and then someone else would just like outbid.
Immediately.
I genuinely feel there may have been reps in there from Toyota like doing ghost bidding to artificially inflate the prices. It was just a nightmare.
See, then I had the idea that as part of this, we were like, right, look, as much as I don't want to sell our integrity short as filmmakers, what if we do it as CGI? What if we do the Tarago purely as CGI? We'll put the actors into like a green shell of a car that only sort of moderately looks like it, and we'll just do it in post. Of course, couldn't do it. Reason being is Toyota, in their craftiness, didn't want anyone that could actually design a CGI Tarago to exist in the world either. So they bought them all. Bought all the CGI artists that could render a Tarago correctly and beautifully. They now work for Toyota. So that was it. So we were faced with the decision of like, all right, well, do we keep it as a Tarago or do we actually try and get a different car? And
I mean, it has been a 5-year protracted or 4.5-year protracted battle, but we got there in the end.
We did.
And that is the official story.
Yes, it definitely had nothing to do with COVID, that's for sure.
No, we're not mentioning that. That is the official story as to why there has been no episodes released in the last 4.5 years.
To Toyota, I will say that, you know, there's no reason why the Tarago can't come back now. Like, production's finished. There's no scarcity anymore. Just bring it back. The people want it.
Exactly. I mean, this is the thing, right? You know, they stopped manufacturing back in 2019. Obviously, we've all agreed that there's been some, you know, hiccups, some roadblocks.
Yes.
They're aware that, you know, we've obviously sorted out. They're aware that this, you know, movie tie-in theme park ride / series of wacky adventures is about to kick off.
Yes.
So I think, you know,
Absolutely.
maybe they should fire up the Tarago factories or whatever they're made, get them back on the streets.
I'm imagining a smelter of some kind that they just come out fully formed.
Do you remember when they re-released the VW Beetle in like the early 2000s, and it was kind of like the iMacification of, like, you know, and it's like, it doesn't really have that classic look, but they're trying to like market it.
But it's also kind of there as well. It's sort of just, you can
maybe some
and it's
fluorescent lime Taragos, some pastel-y pink.
And need some
we'll get some TikToker young tween girls to like. I think I got Mandy Moore to put the new VW in a music video, so maybe they can tie in some stuff there.
Maybe we can reboot Mandy Moore as part of our campaign for the new Tarago.
We are obviously very successful film studio executives, but we do have a lot of ideas that can work incredibly well with other industries. So hit us up, Toyota. You know, there's no reason we can't have a partnership. We get some kickbacks from that.
I will say this as well. I'm not interested in bringing the Tarago back for some kind of Turner Family Tarago sequel where an evil future version of the Tarago comes back to battle our old family-loved Tarago. Definitely not a thing.
We're not interested in that.
Not interested.
Not interested. Okay.
No. This is purely bringing the Tarago back for being a Tarago. All right, on to this week in trailers. And first up for this week, we have Stop Motion, directed by Robert Morgan and starring Aisling Franciosi, Stella Gonnet, and Tom York. Not the one from Radiohead.
Such a morbid imagination. Bringing dead things to life.
Hey, she emerges from her cave.
Hello.
When do you think you'll finish this film of yours?
I don't know.
What's all that stuff?
It's called stop motion animation. What do you think?
It's a bit boring.
It's not finished. I mean, it's not boring.
Make a new one.
A new one?
Yeah. I know a better story. You want to hear it?
I have to say, even the thumbnail on YouTube of the picture of the little stop motion doll before we even watched the trailer just creeped me out. It's like a doll's face made of melted wax.
Yeah.
It's like the eyes are misaligned.
It's almost embryonic.
It is so very, very creepy, and the trailer really doesn't disappoint. Based on the back of this incredible, like, obviously one of the most difficult things to come up with in a horror film is that original horror character. You have a few that have come out, like Slender Man is one of those ones where is a recent example of a very creative and very sort of creepy horror film character. But this little stop motion doll is like I really sort of up there with something that's just incredibly unsettling.
So to give some context, the whole premise of this story is we've got a woman who's making a stop motion short in her house. She's kind of a bit of a loner, or is very like obsessed with her work. Her niece, I think, visits one day.
Small girl.
Some child visits one day and queries, "What are you doing? That looks boring. You should make a new film." And this little girl pitches the kind of idea of this very creepy
the Ashman something
character,
along those lines, and then it becomes a psychological expression of the lady who's making the stop motion can no longer distinguish the difference between reality and the stop motion. The character that she's brought to life through the stop motion sort of enters the world and starts following her around.
And enters the world as a full life-size version of that character as well, in a very, very creepy way.
And then it sort of starts getting into her scraping her own legs with razor blades, and then maybe
that
potentially suggesting that she's also made out of the wax of the clay doll. And it is very disturbing.
Yes.
In a really interesting way.
Yes.
Was this an A24?
This particular one wasn't, but this is the director's first feature-length film from Robert Morgan, who'd only done shorts before that. The thing about this is, like, the interesting thing about this, and what I quite like about it, is they've gone for something that, like, stop motion can look a little bit creepy just by virtue of how it's made. And they've really leaned into that aesthetic with this one. It's definitely no Wallace and Gromit, that's for sure.
I think they've done. There's a whole bunch of like really interesting things that they've done in here to create that sense of unease. I think mining something like stop motion or stop frame animation hasn't been done in this way before. Although having said that, I do remember the band Tool. I think one of the members of Tool studied stop frame animation, and all of their music videos, or at least a large chunk of their early ones, were this sort of creepy, surreal stop frame stuff that they did. Very reminiscent of that. And when you said Tom York earlier, I'm like, I assumed it was the Radiohead Tom York, and there was somehow sort of linked in with this.
They've done 2 stop motion music videos before, and both of them, while not to the same level of like gory body horror that this film has, are sort of equally unsettling in various ways. So yes, definitely all the Tom Yorks of the world series.
All of them.
Every single one. I do like, you know what I actually really like about this? I like that you can now make a horror film from just random production techniques.
Anything.
Which I think like, surely that is the thing we need to take away from this. As much as, you know, the horror thing doesn't quite, like, I'm not big on it. It
is not my genre. I think when we were watching that trailer, you could visibly see how upset I was getting at certain points. I don't really have any intention of putting myself through that for the length of a feature film. But you are right. You can literally
any production technique.
Pick anything and go, what if this was a creepy horror film? And so long as you got the talent behind it, you can definitely make it disturbing.
Perfect. All right, on to the next film in this week's episode, which is Ricky Stenicki, directed by Peter Farrelly and starring Zac Efron, John Cena, and William H. Macy.
Stenicki, what up, man? Are you serious? Have someone call me when you get out of surgery, all right?
You should drive out there. Ricky's been there for you guys your whole lives.
The devil's in the details, my friend.
It worked.
Atlantic City, here we come.
What we got?
Ricky's cancer's back.
Why does it have to be cancer? Won't everybody get worried?
Yeah, and that's going to take us right into the World Series.
To Ricky Stenicki, the best friend we never had.
My baby's going to be born 6 weeks early.
I was born 6 weeks early.
Oh, I want to know where the hell you guys were tonight. We called every hospital and there was no record of a Ricky Stenicki.
You know, all we did was tell one lie.
Hundreds and hundreds of times over many, many years.
If the truth does come out, my marriage is over.
What if we hire an actor to play Stenicki?
I noticed when you did the list of the actors there, you didn't do... you did the well recognized names.
Yes.
I think the film is basically about a core group of 3 friends who as a way of lying to their wives so they can go and do fun things like, you know, gambling in Vegas, have invented a friend, Ricky Stenicki, and they just say, oh, you know, I think in this particular case Ricky has got cancer, so they have to go and take care of him, and they use that as an excuse for a weekend away. And then when it becomes clear that potentially they have made up this character, they're forced to hire in John Cena to play the character. John Cena being a particularly unsuccessful, he has a stage show where he does dirty sexual innuendos, and then John Cena worms his way into their lives and chaos ensues. The main group of friends, though, does include other people other than Zac Efron, but who are nowhere near as recognizable in terms of names. I have seen a few things that they've all been in before, but definitely Zac Efron and John Cena are the big draw cards.
I mean, I had to do some name dropping there, and I think that like name dropping Peter Farrelly as well. You know what's interesting? I think that it's interesting they didn't go from the maker of or from the creator of, because I think that
you could have had a really long list there and a really absurdly varied list.
I think so.
The Farrelly brothers have sort of obviously starting out with the absurd comedies like your Dumb and Dumbers and Something About Mary's, and then
Shallow Hal. Stuck on You.
Oh dear. Okay, all right. And then venturing into the Green Oscar Academy Award winning Green Book.
Can you imagine as well if you'd only ever seen Green Book and thinking, I wonder what Peter Farrelly's doing next.
Somehow you've thought, I like this director. I'll explore the rest of their filmography. It's a little bit like who did Vice? The Todd Phillips or even Joker? Right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I really liked Joker. Maybe I'll go and see his early films. Old School. I wonder if that's also a dark, delving dive into
psychology and mental illness. Yeah, sure, absolutely. It's interesting. So Peter Farrelly obviously pivoting back to what he's known for, which is a lot of, I guess, kind of gross out comedy.
Goofy, I'm not
screwball-y.
This is very fish out of water-ish, right? I
a
think
little bit, yeah.
There's a number of films. The one that comes to mind is, do you remember the Martin Short film Clifford?
Yes.
Which Martin Short is playing like a 8-year-old boy.
Yeah.
And it's very much a, you've invited this chaotic force into your life.
Yep.
And at every turn they're doing things to derail your reality, essentially.
A little bit Beetlejuice-esque
Beetlejuice-esque.
well.
There's, I think Melissa McCarthy played a lot of these roles in something like Identity Thief with Jason Bateman. She's like, a criminal, and it's like, well, I'll take you into our home, and then, or even the Bean movie, right?
Yes,
it's a similar sort of premise.
The premise is person that does not belong in situation goes into situation.
Almost like a You, Me, and Dupree. It's obviously been done a number of times before, but there's that, that chaotic energy that... although I think with Clifford, Charles Grodin just played that frustrated... grumpy, like he was the dad in Beethoven. He always played that sort of frustrated. My life is getting turned upside down. These things shouldn't be happening. So there's a lot of comedy gold in them hills, as you can sort of see. And I do quite like Zac Efron. He was in Iron Claw, I think. Did Iron Claw get some Oscar noms recently? The Oscar noms came out a couple of days ago. So
good question.
Where, just checked with the Academy. 0 Academy Award nominations for Iron Claw. I felt like they had a bit of Oscar buzz to it, especially like Zac Efron playing outside type, I suppose. He has a bit of a storied career.
What is his type now?
I don't know. I think that he has been an actor who has been quite good at reinventing himself. Obviously, starting out in High School Musical, trying to play this character who's both a jock and someone who loves musical theatre, and then going, I think, Charlie St. Cloud and a few of those sort of rom-coms.
Yep.
What was the Matt Perry 13 going on 30 or whatever?
Wasn't he in? He was in
17 again. Sorry, I think that was called.
Wasn't there another film where he was like wasn't he in Baywatch as well?
He was in Baywatch with Dwayne Johnson and Jason Momoa and a few other people.
Yep.
I think he got into I want to say a car crash or something recently and fractured his jaw. And so in the process of rebuilding and re-strengthening that, his face kind of has a slightly different shape, which has a much sort of...
The Mark Hamill effect.
Yeah, yes. The Mark Hamill effect, where it has a sort of slightly squarer, boxier shape to it.
Hang on, you're telling me that as a result of a car accident, he's even more handsome now?
There's a different type of handsome, but yeah, he's definitely got that sort of more G.I. Joe type,
right?
Rather than he was very boyish, but I suppose that just happens as you grow older as well.
So going back to Ricky Stenicki for a second, I think the interesting thing about this is that we haven't had like a comedy come out to cinema for quite a long time. Now this has been released by Amazon and on Amazon Prime, but it is going to cinemas as well, I believe, at some point.
Studio comedy has really fallen off.
It's gone, yeah.
There is still, I think, the Anyone But You is a rom-com that Sydney Sweeney and Glenn Powell are the main characters on, that sort of came out earlier this year, possibly late last year, and that was probably one of the first cinematic released rom-coms in a really long time. Actually did quite well, picked up a lot of steam, had a very slow start, but then sort of I think word of mouth and a whole bunch of things.
Yes,
it actually earned over $100 million at the box office.
That's not bad.
I'm hoping is probably a good indication that the studio comedy could come back.
It could, yeah. And I think the thing that's really going to sell this particular film, I'm looking at the poster for it now, and down the bottom of it, sort of splayed across the characters, is a big yellow warning saying, "Warning, an R-rated comedy." Like the old school DVDs.
Yeah, there you go.
That's it right there, right? Like that has to be
the draw card to get people in going, it's not, it's not the teen comedy. We haven't softened down the jokes.
This isn't one of those like obscure, like we have a message about the world comedies that's always a bit snide and a bit snipey and so on.
This is straight up
hardball,
R-rated, gross out. John Cena pees his pants comedy, and it's what we've all been crying out for.
That's it. Like
I do genuinely hope it does well, because I would like to see a lot more studio comedies back.
It's been a while, yeah. I miss the kind of, they were talking about rebooting The Naked Gun for a long time, and I believe that Liam Neeson is in that role at the moment as Frank Drebin. For a while, it was Ed Helms, I think.
I think Ed Helms has a bit of a Leslie Nielsen vibe to him. Obviously, Leslie Nielsen's most iconic quality is his like stark white hair. But if you give that to Ed Helms, I can sort of see that kind of working.
I think because he was in the National Lampoon Family Vacation reboot.
The whole
as playing the character that was made popular by Chevy Chase.
Well, he wasn't. He was playing his son.
Playing his son, right? Yes.
So Chevy Chase still actually played Clark Griswold, and he played Rusty.
So
it was the next generation. Yep. He'd grown up. Not a bad film, but didn't really work. They did another one. Speaking of rebooting Chevy Chase roles, Fletch Lives came out.
Oh, right, yeah.
No, it was a Fletch. Confess Fletch. Sorry,
right.
Which was a John Hamm played the role of Fletch, which is interesting. He brings a very different energy than Chevy Chase does, but then it's based on a series of books that had a very sort of different comedic energy, and obviously Chevy Chase brings his own thing. The John Hamm film wasn't too bad either. But I think, speaking of rebooting old film series, brings us quite nicely into the next film.
Yes, and our final film for this week's episode is Beverly Hills Cop Axel F, directed by Mark Malloy and starring Eddie Murphy, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and Judge Reinhold.
I almost admire you. Still on these streets, running and cutting. I'm just amazed. Doesn't get to you.
Watch your ass out there, okay?
I'm gonna be fine. They love me in Beverly Hills. Detective Foley, you ever read your own file? Shootouts, disturb the peace, a lot.
Please tell me you didn't get arrested again.
Twice, but I broke out.
I think I mentioned the word Legasequel to you as we were watching this, and you said you hadn't heard of it before.
I hadn't, but I love it.
It's definitely a term that has cropped up in the last 4.5 years. I think obviously it's been done forever. I mean, you could apply that to our favourite film of all time, Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which is, it is obviously a portmanteau of the words legacy and sequel. Mm-hmm. It's this idea that we're going to release a new film in the franchise a good 20 years. I can't remember.
Years, yeah.
84, I think, was the first Beverly Hills Cop, somewhere around there.
What was the third one? Obviously the best one.
I would say probably in the late 80s, early 90s. I'm not 100% sure. Mm-hmm. But that is, 30 years later, you are rebooting a film franchise to try and capitalize on that nostalgia factor. I quite like the term Legasequel. Yeah. Some of them do quite well, some of them do quite poorly. I was reading about this one, Beverly Hills Cop, Axel F, that the...
What number does that mean? What does that translate to in Roman numerals?
It's interesting, yeah. I mean, normally they try and slam in some sort of number in there, which is Bad Boys for Life is one of those ones where... Bad Boys for Life was actually technically 3, right? So the fact that it's got a number 4 in there just makes it even more confusing. So I think the interesting thing with this one is the director of this one, which is Mark Malloy, replaced 2 directors...
Yep.
Who were
Brett Ratner, I believe, is one of them, right?
So Adil El Abri and Bilal Fallah.
Yes.
Belgian directors who actually did the Bad Boys for Life Legasequel. So Mark Malloy replaced the previous people who had previously, their claim to fame was the sequel. They'd apparently passed on this one to focus on a different feature film, Batgirl.
Ooh.
And for the Batgirl has a bit of a difficult history in that the studio who did that just they filmed it and then they just essentially shelved it.
Yes,
it's unreleased.
That unknown indie studio known as Warner Brothers.
Warner Brothers, yes. Spent all the money making it, all the money shooting it, and then just decided, no, we don't even want to release this.
Yeah, it was a tax write-off for them. I mean, look, at least we released the Turner Family Tarago after 4 years of protracted development. It's a shame that... it's always a shame when films go in the vault and never get seen, for better or worse.
Although, look... Maybe they did it for a reason. Would you have preferred that the Halle Berry Catwoman be released or have stayed in a vault?
You know what it should be? We should have a prisoner swap system they do for political prisoners.
All I can imagine is Pierce Brosnan crossing the bridge in whatever that...
In Die Another Day, a film that also should have a prisoner swap for something better.
It's fine. Everything everything happens for a reason.
That's true.
Maybe one day in the future, if people demand enough of a Snyder cut of Batgirl, it might happen.
But it has to be done by Zack Snyder.
Yes, every Snyder cut, every film that is critically badly received
just needs to release the Snyder cut. It'll be in black and white, 4:3 aspect ratio,
and for some reason everything is in super slow motion.
And 5 hours long,
slow motion within slow motion. Someone pointed that out. He has a new film out, which is
Rebel Moon,
original sci-fi, and they were showing that there is slow motion within the slow motion.
Wow!
So like
are the people just watching like a slow motion monitor?
I have no idea why, but you see the people jump in the action sequence, and then it slows down, and then like they're about to hit something, and then it slows down further. So it's like Inception levels of slow mo within slow mo.
It's slow motion inertia, right? Like if you're leaping into slow motion, there's obviously that initial slow down, and then when you actually get to the point, it's slower again. It makes perfect sense.
I think we have deviated a little bit far off the topic of Beverly Hills Cop Axel F. I think the two big features of the Beverly Hills Cops films were that it was an action cop film, and it had a fast-talking, quick-witted Eddie Murphy tying everything together. This trailer gives me both of those things.
It does, and Judge Reinhold too.
And they've managed to bring back characters. Paul Reiser, I think Paul Reiser might have been in.
He was in the second one,
possibly. Yeah,
and possibly no. I think he was just in the second one. But then you've also got John Ashton, who plays Sergeant John Taggart, who retired from the force in Beverly Hills Cop 3, which was in 1994.
Okay, there you go.
And he's returning to the role after 35 years from Beverly Hills Cop 2.
Even so, they had the shot. There's a shot in the trailer where Judge Reinhold and his partner are sitting in the car.
Yes,
and that they have this nice witty,
the classic banter between
and
the
it's
cops,
and it's sharp. They have good comedic timing. It feels like what you would want to see out of a Beverly Hills Cop trailer.
I'm ready for it.
Who's to say what the film will actually be like? But it genuinely does feel like it has the energy that you'd want to see out of a Lego sequel like this.
So in a weird way, the first Beverly Hills Cop film that I watched was Beverly Hills Cop 3, which traditionally is known as one of the worst ones.
I did that as well. But mainly because it was labelled in my as Beverly Hills Cop. So
really?
whatever. Not to say that I pirated it, but whatever file I ended up with, I thought I was watching the first one. So I'm not sure if you knew you were watching Beverly Hills Cop 3.
I think I did.
I watched Beverly Hills Cop 3 thinking it was Beverly Hills Cop 1.
And were you just very disappointed with the first and second one when they just didn't have the same tonal?
No, I mean, I liked Beverly Hills Cop 3 because they go to like some...
They go to a theme park at the end, and he's got like a boombox that has a rocket launcher in it as well.
It was genuinely fun. It was what I was expecting out of those films. I will agree that the first film at least is slightly different quality tonally, but I never saw a decrease in quality. In fact, it was actually just an increase, right?
Yeah.
You go from Beverly Hills Cop 3 going, this is a perfectly good film.
Then it gets better.
And it gets better from there. I think, it's all about expectations, and starting at the bottom and working your way up only makes the experience even better.
So we should only ever watch films that happen in a trilogy or in a sequence in the order that we think.
Yeah, let other people watch it first. Yeah. Tell me which ones are the best and the worst.
And then watch it in that order.
Start on the worst and go from there.
Yeah, perfect. All right, those are the 3 films for this week's episode. But of course, before we can do anything with those, we're going to have to take a little walk over to the green room.
Let's go.
And here we are. Man, it's dingy in here. It's been a while.
It is dusty, right? When I flicked on that light and bathed the room, it's supposed to bathe the room in green light so that all of our ideas, when birthed, are automatically green lit.
Yep.
But that bulb was a little bit dusty, and it's more of like a khaki, not really the bright green light that we really wanted to
soft green
to birth our ideas into.
Yeah. All right. To summarize the films for this week's episode, we have
a creature horror film that's based on an artistic style/medium.
We also have
a fish out of water R-rated studio comedy.
And finally, we have
a Lego sequel action adventure comedy police fast talking Eddie Murphy's there. It's all fun. Let's do
all right, good. I love it. All right. As usual, we're going to take bits and pieces from all of these fantastic films. Yeah. Let's figure out what our core film is going to be.
I mean, when we were having our discussion, the thing that I really wanted to see more of in cinemas were R-rated comedies. R-rated comedies. I feel like the Ricky Stenicki, just as a core concept of let's get those films back in there. I think we can do that. I mean, there are some problems with like if we chose a Lego sequel, we then have to acquire the rights to a film franchise.
Look.
I think we do an original concept R-rated. I mean, is there a rating even more gross out and absurd than R?
I mean, R plus.
Yeah, I think
like Apple Plus.
The R rating is I'd never realized is different between Australia and the US. In Australia, R is sort of like 18 plus, kind of generally has explicit sexual content. It is sort of borderline XXX rating, borderline pornographic. In the US, R is just kind of restricted for a variety of reasons. You could have adult themes without explicit sexual content. So when I heard, I think Midnight Cowboy was the first R-rated film to win an Academy Award, and I watched it expecting to see like a lot more like weird, disturbing stuff, and I'm like, oh, this is just like. This is more like an MA-15 sort of like film, but different ratings in different countries.
I really hate that you've put the Oscars in my head because now, particularly given that Ricky Stenicki was directed by Peter Farrelly, who did win. They won Oscars for Green Book.
Yep, best picture, best original screenplay.
And now you're talking about Midnight Cowboy being an R-rated film that won an Academy Award. I really think.
Are we going to be the first R-rated comedy?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, that's a pretty high bar to set.
I mean, it's bad enough trying to get a comedy nominated as an Academy Award for an Academy Award.
I do think though, I think what we mentioned with stop motion is trying to draw upon just any weird artistic production
technique,
creativity thing. It'd be kind of interesting. Or the other interesting thing is, what if the fish out of water who's coming in to disrupt people's lives is a horror creature? What would happen if Slender Man just sort of entered into the lives of three friends and just started screwing things up?
Do you want to go really meta? So if we say that it's a studio, a film movie studio who's making a Slender Man film, right? And they've got an actor who's going really method with the Slender Man character.
Okay, I like this. I like the method. I mean, obviously our own original IP horror character.
Yeah. And obviously it has to be played by Daniel Day-Lewis. I don't care that he says he's retired. We're getting him out of
when
retirement.
you said method, I thought Jared Leto with
I mean, look, I don't see why we can't put him in the film either as one of the friends.
Is that going to be too method? Is a method actor playing a method actor?
Do they cancel each other
playing a
out?
horror character? Just way too many Inception levels
I think it's the
deep.
right level of challenge.
I mean, honestly, there is some interesting ideas in there where if even if we're doing that in the film, it's a method actor playing a method actor, and then there's also a layer of reality.
Yeah.
Part of the problem that the rest of the cast who play our regular crew that this person is creating chaos has to try and figure out a way of snapping them out of it, because maybe they have gone in way too deep.
Yeah. So are we pitching here an R-rated comedy?
R-rated
horror comedy?
So they are making a horror film, but the film is the making of that film, which is an R-rated comedy.
Okay. Yes. So
and it is based around a cast of, maybe it is a cast of friends who have been in films together before, and they know each other and they have this shorthand, and our lives are so good, we're in these movies, we just like hanging out in set, and
it's like how Adam Sandler makes films.
It is. I mean, it is exactly like how Adam Sandler makes films. You have your Adam Sandler, you have your Kevin James, you have your David Spade, you have your Chris Rock. They all show up. We put it in some location where it's really just an excuse to have a holiday. But this time they're making a creature film, and there is let's say three friends. There is a fourth actor who comes in to method play creature horror, and bringing that character into this scenario actually starts creating turmoil in the lives.
It's like messing with their lives a little bit, outside. When the cameras stop rolling, he never stops.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
And I don't know if we have what if people actually get murdered in whatever town that they're in, and they're not sure if this guy has gone way too method, is suddenly actually murdering.
I mean, is this where if murders come into it, do we bring cops into it? Does it become?
I think so.
A mystery at that point too.
I think that's interesting. We can put in some because fundamentally the Beverly Hills Cops films are a little bit murder mystery.
Yeah.
There's, who killed it, why they killed them. So like having that sort of like police action-y bit in the background could actually sort of like tie everything together.
I really love this because I like the idea that like the cops that initially assigned to this case just think it's like another like, it's another Hollywood thing. These actors are always like doing weird things. They obviously know. I think Jared Leto should play Jared Leto in our film. So like, and they've always had reports about like weird stuff that Jared Leto has done.
I honestly, can I just like, I don't necessarily agree with a lot of the stuff that he's actually done in the real world on sets to people.
Correct.
I would prefer not to have whoever our three friends stars are in the film. It might be funny if used condoms get mailed to them. I just don't want to put people through that.
I don't.
I think it would be. Right. I think like obviously fundamentally we are making a comedy.
Yep.
It would be funnier if we have someone like Adam Driver doing an impression of Jared Leto.
Yep.
Like so, and I should genuinely think like because. If you've watched any of the times that Adam Driver has hosted SNL, his comic timing is phenomenal. Mm-hmm. I think he could play a Jared Leto type incredibly well.
I think so.
And he does kind of have that Slender Man kind of build to him. There's phenomenal interviews of like him getting, he's doing the press tour. It's like, is it, weird that you're a Hollywood star when your face looks like this? And he's just like... It's just my face. Like, what am I supposed to do about that? And like, he's such a professional. I really enjoy it.
He used to be in the military as well.
He was, he was a Marine. So yeah, I think him playing that kind of slightly unsettling horror creature will be great. But we're also casting someone where we know that their comic timing is in such good hands.
Yep. I like this. I like this a lot. All right. So how should we set this up? Like we basically set it up that we go straight onto the film set and we introduce the fact that they're shooting this horror film. Is that like, or do we have it like, so the opening scenes of the film, it's like we're actually watching the horror film itself. It's kind of like Who Framed Roger Rabbit. You know how we start off like...
I think the issue with that is that with these fish out of water or the introductory of the chaotic force into people's lives, you do kind of need to establish the baseline, the reality of what their lives are like without the chaotic element in there. I don't know how you start on the production of a film where they haven't cast, the
you want to do this
yet.
Like pre-casting as well?
Possibly.
Okay.
I was possibly even thinking maybe it is them rapping on their previous film.
Yep.
So it's, whatever the the kind of ones that I have in mind are your Seth Rogen, James Franco kind of, stoner slacker comedy.
Yep.
Maybe they rap on that, and it's like, oh, look how great our lives are. Cha-ching, the studio gives us the check in the mail. What are we doing now? Oh, we're flying to Bulgaria to film that horror film that we've got lined up. This is going to be easy. It's a 2-week shoot. Adam Driver's been cast as this. We've heard he's a professional. He's so good.
Yep.
Probably Oscar nominated for Ferrari. Maybe, I'm not really sure. I probably should have read those Oscar nominations a little bit more closely.
Yeah, I know those press releases are so long.
So we start on that high where they've finished their most recent, and then they fly to Bulgaria or wherever these Eastern Bloc countries are that. They shoot all these low-budget horror films.
We basically just find a country where we don't have to do any set dressing whatsoever.
Yeah,
it's just sort of like that.
But it still has to be Bucharest and Sofia and all these of these they're
always just shown on screen like grey tinged skies.
But they're very beautiful cities with these like old architecture. So maybe it's I went to college with a guy who was I think from Romania, and he was saying, don't go to Western Europe because it's also expensive there. If you come to Eastern Europe, it's just as beautiful and your money will go so much further, and everyone will be so much more thankful for you being there. So that's what we sort of draw upon.
That's the motto of our studio, isn't it?
Exactly. This is why, movie film studios should be twinned with Moldova or somewhere like that where
It's like, how like certain cities have like a sister city in a totally different country. Like that's what we need.
Having said that, wasn't Ricky Stenicki filmed in Melbourne?
It was.
You just go to the places that have those sweet, lucrative deals where they want you there. They want you filming things.
That's it, yeah. Tax breaks.
A film that I mentioned earlier, Anyone But You, was filmed in Sydney. There's an upcoming...
The Power Rangers film from 95 was also
Emily
filmed
Blunt
in Sydney.
and Ryan Gosling's Fall Guy is set in Sydney. So, there's lots of incentives to go on...
Keep it local.
Yeah, I mean, do we set it in? Do we do that instead of going to Eastern Bloc country? Do we maybe bring it to Australia?
I mean, that might help us find like an Adam Sandler-esque clique of people that just want to have a holiday.
This is exactly right. I think it's more holiday bait. And then when we have the murder mystery thing and the detectives show up, it's a good excuse to start casting Australian actors in that role of being that detective type
Every
character.
single secondary character needs to be an Australian.
Yeah, exactly.
Actor
I mean, but when you see the clips of the movies, they're all the Americans because they're the actors, but all the characters around them are local.
We'll definitely have 2 pages of like acting credits on the trailer. The first page is going to be all the American actors, and the second page will be all the Australian ones.
Very off topic. I often found it weird the way in which the cast is arranged. Sometimes it's in order of appearance. Sometimes it's just like, obviously there's a
prominence in the film.
Yeah, prominence in the film. Sometimes it's alphabetical. The order of appearance is always weird when like the first person you see is like some news reporter who's giving all the stick about like and it's like, why is I don't know, Emma Thompson billed first in I Am Legend when she's only in it for like the first 30 seconds. That's probably because...
I mean, there's also another category of that, which I would call aspirational billing, where you have an actor who has some prominence to their name, but is not in the film for very long, but you kind of want them at the top because it just seems like they're in. It's like the Godzilla reboot that happened a few years back, where Bryan Cranston was very prominently mentioned as like one of the actors in this film.
There is a difference between marketing and then obviously title cards where each actor gets them, and some of them get the and some of them get introducing.
Yeah.
But Danny DeVito as the Penguin, whatever. But like when you actually have the crawl going up, the order in which they're there just often doesn't make any sense to me.
It doesn't. All right, that's it. We digress.
We are digressing quite a lot.
So we're going to shoot it here. It's going to be about a group of acting friends who are traveling to another country to shoot some like relatively large budget horror film with Adam Driver. Adam Driver is going to be the horror creature in question, but he is so method that he plays that horror creature when the cameras stop rolling. And then the film is going to be about how those 3 friends react to whatever Adam Driver is doing. So what is he going to do
I think that there is a second meta-narrative where in the real world a murder or crime takes place, which is being investigated, and the 3 friends can't figure out whether Adam Driver actually did the murder.
Is it going to be like a lookalike murder where like...
It is definitely something that is so akin to what is happening in the story that they question. Like possibly someone from the film set had to have done this because... It is like, the details of this script are under such like a non-disclosure that only someone from the film could have copycatted this murder.
I like that.
Or, there's a bunch
then you can do scenes where they're looking through the dailies of the stuff that they've shot and they're seeing the similarities between what they're seeing on the news and so on and so forth. And then the cops are visiting the film set as well, trying to figure out like, is there actually a connection between what's happening in this film and what's happening in the real world? How come the security camera footage that they've got of like the actual murders taking place shows a shadowy figure that kind of looks like Adam Driver in costume?
Interesting.
I'm really liking this.
This is a good idea. The issue that I'm having is that
it's not very funny though.
It will be though. Like it's kind of I see it as being like The Hangover. You have the Zach Galifianakis character in there. I think we didn't watch it this week, but the Fall Guy trailer is Ryan Gosling is a stuntman. Who was a stuntman in all these big Hollywood films. And then when the A-list Hollywood actor turns up dead and he is then being pursued by the Russian mafia or whatever it happens to be and has to employ his action sequence jumping off buildings kind of skills to get past it. I kind of see the 3 friends are sort of like, there is that element of Beverly Hills Cop action sequences where they're getting in over their head, and Adam Driver is just being very stoic and not emotionally reacting to any of the things, and they're not sure if he should be, like, you know, very much like the Zach Galifianakis, where they don't really like him, but he's kind of along for the ride as all this crazy stuff is happening. So I think, you know, there's a lot of you know, interesting things. One of the things that I think ties a lot of these films together is the introduction of an organized crime element.
Ooh.
And I feel like there is a lot of shady money going around financing Hollywood films.
Hey, not us.
No, I'm not saying anything about ours. Like, no, definitely not movie film studios.
The shady indie ones, like Warner Brothers.
Yeah, exactly. Warner Brothers, and this is probably like Batgirl ended up on the shelf. It's because, like, ethically, they're just like, oh, a lot of this is drug money. I'm not sure we can.
Warner Brothers, we apologize. It's not libel.
Yeah, we've heard.
So we've heard.
So maybe there is like this organized crime element of the financing behind this horror film is from some sort of organized crime. And so when the murders start showing up connected to the film, maybe it has more of a crime element to it. And then when they're investigating, they sort of stick their foot in areas where they shouldn't necessarily be. And maybe that's why this, this whole
I like
thing
this
sort of goes
too, because like, to me, the organized crime element is really creative because they have to wait for the dailies to be shot. Then they have to review them. Then they have to come up with a crime that links it to those dailies.
I would suggest that because it is like a money laundering thing, some guy in the crime organization just wrote the script, just like literally typed out whatever. Come to Australia, film it here. It's all really just some sort of like money laundering thing. And so when people start showing up getting killed in the same way that appear in the script, it's because the crime organization wrote the script.
I love this too because there's a very famous story, and I don't know how true it is, but there's a very famous story that the only reason that Bill Murray did the voice of Garfield for the like live action Garfield films is because it was written by someone with a surname Cohen, and he confused it with the Coen brothers. So like there's precedent here.
Exactly. So it's like, the Spielberg or drug cartel in Melbourne or whatever it happens to be.
In the same way that films say from the, Oscar-nominated director or Oscar-nominated or Oscar-winning writer of these films, like that's exactly what's happened in this case. It's some criminal who has the same name as a famous author or a famous writer.
Exactly.
And that's been enough to get these three friends to sign up for this film. It's very much against their type as well. They always do their gross out kind of like low budget slapstick comedies. And then this one comes out of nowhere and it's got this prominent name on it. It's got Adam Driver already cast. And they're just like, well, it's a done deal. We have to do it. And we get a free holiday to Australia as well. So I think this is beautiful. All right. I have two questions for you.
Yes.
The question one is, what are we going to do to make it a gross out comedy?
Oh, right. Interesting. We've done a lot of the Beverly Hills Cop action, police thriller, drug chase, probably some car chase.
We've got the horror stuff covered as well. How do we make it gross out?
It honestly has reminded me quite a lot of 21 Jump Street.
Yep.
They do a lot of gross out. It's kind of a little bit sophomoric, like juvenile humor in that.
Yep.
Is
it a case of like, are the murders or whatever happen or the killings, are they just done in like humorously grotesque ways?
Possibly. So was your second question there before we answer the first one?
Okay, so my second question is, we've set a very lofty goal of trying to make this an Academy Award winning film.
That's true as well. I'm going to put a third dot point in there in that the stop motion it picked out a very specific creative medium.
Yes.
And
I think that we've got that in method acting.
Okay, so that's what we're going to go for.
That's like it's a production technique or a something related to the creation of a film. That is not necessarily a subject of a film in its own right, but has now been turned into one. It is
well enough known. So one of the things that I've heard quite a lot about method acting is that it has the stereotype of method acting is not really explicitly what the method is. So either we lean really heavily into the stereotype or we try and dispel the stereotype by actually sort of showing what the method
actually is. Yeah. And that's how we win the Academy Award.
I think so. Honestly, you look at La La Land and anything that sort of deals with the Hollywood process
for sure.
that is all like, oh, Hollywood, look how good you are and how meaningful cinema is. they'd throw Oscars at that garbage. So, like, I think we're going to attract and we just need to hire like Academy Award winning directors. I don't know who that would be.
Directors that have the same name as Academy Award winning directors. Can we get Peter Farrelly? He has one.
But the thing is, so we need two directors, right? We need the person who's directing the film
and the actor that's the director,
and the actor who's directing the film, the actor who's playing the director who's directing the film in the film.
In the film, yeah. Okay.
So like, you could have it. You go super meta and have it both be the same person.
I reckon so.
Or at least, who's the other fella? Bobby Farrelly.
Bobby Farrelly.
So you have Peter Farrelly directing it.
You know what?
Or you have Joel Cohen directing the film, but Ethan Cohen playing the director in the film.
I think that the Academy of Motion Picture and Arts has really gotten like the taste of the Farrelly experience when they gave the Oscar to Green Book. So now we've got to get the second Farrelly in there. So I think that Bobby Farrelly needs to be
interesting.
The actor director.
I'm going to throw one other spanner in the works.
Yep.
I think Lord Miller.
Yep.
Did 21 Jump Street.
Yep.
Maybe. And I think they've also been Oscar nominated for the Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
They have, yes.
Which uses kind of like an animation style, like a combination of 2D and 3D and cell shading and screen printing and 24 frames a second and 12 frames a second. They're meshing this up. So we could possibly get, Lord to be the actual director, Miller to play the director, and then introduce, on top of the method acting thing, maybe some weird in-film not necessarily stop frame animation, but that kind of like animation style on top of the whole thing, just to throw some more spaghetti at the wall.
I think this is the thing, because I and this might be our way into the Academy as well, because we don't necessarily need to win a specific Academy Award. We just need to win a Academy Award.
And you know what the most under-contested one every single year is?
Best Animated Feature.
Best Animated Feature. There is so much garbage that gets nominated for Animated Feature. Like, how did Sing 2 get nominated for Best Animated? Was there really that little competition?
I think there was. I mean, look, it's probably one of those years where neither Pixar nor Studio Ghibli released a film.
But this is the thing, is like Pixar can shit out whatever it wants and it's definitely going to get Oscar nominated.
Yeah.
Like a year where like a Pixar film doesn't get Oscar nominated is just like, there must have been literally nothing else.
Finding Dory came out this year.
Yeah, look, it's so virtually every single animated film ever made gets nominated for best.
I think
best
that
picture.
like there is a much bigger chance of us getting nominated for like, is this an animation now?
Maybe it is a Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Or like a hybrid thing. Yeah, okay.
So it gives us the excuse to still have the live action Best Friends.
Yep.
It has the excuse to be shooting on and you know what's even more hilarious is that we just have like Adam Driver in a mocap suit. So like when everyone else just gets to wear regular clothes,
oh, that's perfect.
He's
that's
in
it.
the mocap suit.
So we don't have to spend any money on like prosthetics or like costuming. No, he's in a green mocap suit.
I think they do it a bit differently nowadays.
I think it's usually like grey or
grey and
something
black
reflective,
with like checkered patterns and
we'll do whatever the industry's doing.
Industry standard, yeah.
Spare no expense. I also think this solves the problem of how to do gross out stuff now as well, because as soon as you incorporate animated stuff in it, you can go nuts. Have you seen the like current run of Looney Tunes cartoons on HBO?
No.
Not only are they very good, they're generally more violent than the original like 1950s Warner Brothers cartoons.
They were violent.
And they were pretty violent.
Yeah.
Like, for the most part, the new stuff doesn't actually use guns, but somehow it's even more violent than the stuff that came in the 50s where they were just like shooting each other in the face.
That's interesting as well, right? Because if you had, let's say, like a Wile E. Coyote type trying to like drop anvils and stuff on people in the real world, it does genuinely become like a body horror thing, right?
Yeah.
So like you have this Adam Driver cartoon character who feels as though they can implement cartoon style but like
zaniness,
but when that zaniness is performed, like say you have a wooden mallet that's the size of like and then they whack someone over the head. Well, their head doesn't have like birds that are flying around it. It literally caves in and gets smashed. So that's where we get our horror from. And that's also why these crime scenes are so unique.
Yeah.
When like, someone gets crushed by a grand piano or whatever, and you're like, well, this is weird. This stuff doesn't happen in the real world. This is way too cartoony.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why we need to start investigating.
Yeah. This is great. I mean, I don't know what the metrics are for winning Best Animated Film in terms of how much animation needs to be in it. We'll check the rules on that to make sure that we qualify. But I like the idea that like Adam Driver, because he's in the suit, They give him props to interact with so that he knows, he can act out the things that he's doing. But they're always usually just made out of styrofoam, and they don't look like the thing that he's actually meant to be doing in the context of the story. So if he's got a giant sledgehammer, usually it's just like a stick with some styrofoam on the end of it so that he can actually swing it. I like the idea that he's watching the computer monitor as well after the takes, and the computer monitor does the rudimentary, like, putting the character over the top of his motion capture data so that they can see what it's going to look like when it's finally done.
Real time.
And he's watching it and he's thinking that that's what he's actually doing on the set in the real world. So that when he goes out and sort of gets a real sledgehammer, he's just mimicking what he's seeing on the computer screen where they've done their pre-visualization of what it's going to look like.
Yeah.
It all makes sense.
It's all very,
it all
very,
makes
very
sense.
good.
So the idea is that the film that they're making inside this film is a animated horror film.
It is essentially, imagine if Who Framed Roger Rabbit was a horror creature murder film.
Yeah, perfect.
As opposed to whatever actually, there's a murder element to Who Framed Roger Rabbit, isn't there?
I mean, there is, yeah.
But yes, so it is. That's essentially what they're making.
Okay,
yes.
perfect. I love this. This is all beautiful.
I would, before we wrap up, like to cast the three friends.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Obviously, we've got Adam Driver. Yep. We've got, I would be nice to get Lord and Miller. It would, but really any brother / pair of film directors where we can do the split.
We've got Peter or Bobby Farrelly, or Peter and Bobby Farrelly. We've also got Joel and Ethan Coen, and I mean Lord Miller and they're not brothers, are they?
No,
they're just
Phil Lord and
Chris
Miller.
Yes, Miller Lite.
Yes. So ideally, because we are going to maybe lean on the animation stuff, the Lord Miller thing would be great.
Yep.
But the three friends.
Well, the three friends. Yeah.
Interestingly, so what I'm thinking, and I can't get out of my head, is John Cena was in the Ricky Stenicki.
Yep.
He was in a thing called Blockers, which I think we covered on this years and years ago, which had three parents. Yep. And I can only really remember John Cena and Leslie Mann. So, like, Leslie Mann has been in there because she also shows up as just being, like, token wife in all of those Adam Sandler ones. It'd be nicer, if she had that front and center.
Yep.
But I don't know if that's, like, a good casting, whether there's, like, a different vibe. Because, Zac Efron is, I don't know, like a little bit of that younger, sort of higher energy. We're just sort of here, whereas I feel as though Leslie Mann's moved on to the same way that Judd Apatow has started doing sort of more serious stuff, where she's suddenly more.
I think we do need to bring in a little bit of a higher caliber talent as well, because I really want to have like a stacked out.
All right, so we really want, when we're doing our trailer, and it's like Academy Award nominated. I'm sure Adam Driver's been Academy Award nominated a number of times. Who else is up there? I mean, Emma Stone's been nominated a number of times.
Yeah, I mean, she's definitely doing the weird and wacky stuff at the moment with Poor Things.
I kind of feel like everyone's just a bit too old, right? We need like a younger generation of comedy stars.
Yep.
Like, I mean, obviously you have like Bradley Cooper and Ed Helms and all these people that did The Hangover. That's like
their 50s now.
Exactly. They're like, it's 15, 20 years too late. Yep. You could maybe have like your Michael Cera, Jonah Hill, Christopher Mintz-Plasse, who sort of did the Superbad when they're younger, and now that they're possibly older. But none of them have really gone on to the careers where they're doing those types of films. The other thing that I've just thought of as well, is it meta enough that they're playing themselves? Is it like, Michael Cera is playing Michael Cera, and we do it sort of that meta, or are we doing like a Tropic Thunder where Ben Stiller is playing an actor?
I don't know. I mean, I kind of like the idea. I mean, it's reminding me of Bowfinger, right? Where like they attempt to shoot a film without like Eddie Murphy's character knowing that he's in the film at all. And I almost feel like we could do that if we just sort of offer a free holiday to...
It's interesting. It becomes a bit more mockumentary, sort of like an element to it. I think I do want the actors playing themselves in a weird way. So Adam Driver is playing Adam Driver, playing the animated monster.
Mo-capped monster. Yep.
Who is in that that zone of maybe like 25 to 35-year-old young star who could be part of this sort of like fake ensemble?
I don't want to say Tom Holland.
Tom Holland was our suggestion for all of these things about 5 years ago.
Okay, there's Sydney Sweeney.
I really like Sydney Sweeney.
Yep.
If that's the base level.
How about Zoe Kravitz?
Zoe Kravitz is sort of like in there with the same sort of thing. Who would round out? So if we've got Sydney Sweeney, we have Zoe Kravitz.
Yep.
I don't
want to say Aubrey Plaza.
She's probably a bit
She's
too
a bit old now.
At this. I mean, and I don't want to be one of those studios that dismisses female actresses the moment they hit 35. So if Madam Web's coming out recently, I think there are 3 like Dakota Johnson plays like Madam Web, but there are 3 female superhero stars that are alongside her. Who are those 3?
Allow me to contact the Academy, which is definitely not just Wikipedia. We've got Dakota Johnson, Sydney Sweeney, Celeste O'Connor, Isabella Merced, and Tahar Rahim.
Okay, all right. I thought that one of them might have been Zoe Kravitz.
Honestly, I think we just offer the role to Isabella or Tahar and just see which one of them accepts.
I think, this is definitely one of those things where we're trying to establish that these actors have been in films together previously.
Yep.
So why not pull
it works.
the cast from where they've actually been together recently? So Dakota Johnson is the main character, but we're pulling the 3 other female actresses from Madam Web. And possibly even suggesting in that opening sequence where they're cha-ching, cashing in our check, let's now go to that horror film.
that they've come off Madam Web.
Maybe. I'm not sure. We'll have to see what legality we do have.
Well, there's no legality. All we need to do is just have them coming off the set, and behind them you can just see blurred out. It's just a lot of spider webs.
Exactly.
That's it.
Yeah.
It's just like it's a funny little moment. Like any scary movie would have done it.
Exactly.
So
and we want people laughing at jokes, so get the jokes in as early as possible.
Spoken like a true executive.
And obviously, the most difficult part of this every single episode is coming up with a name for this film.
So, I mean, surely it's just called Method.
I definitely think the word method kind of needs to be in there.
The Method.
The Method?
But lowercase t for like the, and make it, just so it just feels a bit off. And you have to, it has to be written The Method, lowercase t with a full stop on the end.
And then is it : an R-rated studio comedy?
No, that comes down the bottom in a big like stamp, like banner thing across the like.
Because I was thinking something along like Method to the Madness, or like trying to like incorporate the fact, because Method might the film. There is obviously the horror film within the film, which I could not be bothered coming up with a name with, because considering how hard it is going to be.
That's fine.
But the comedy, the studio comedy film that we're making, that is kind of a little bit about the method acting. I feel as though it needs to be a bit more
Method to the Madness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually.
Or is it like there's
a method to the madness?
Yeah.
I think like a nice kind of like throwback to There's Something About Mary.
Oh, interesting.
There's something about the method.
Yeah. There's method to the madness.
Yeah, there's method to. That's really good.
I like that. I like everything about this.
I think that's a wrap on There's Method to the Madness.
There you go.
Yeah, beautiful.
We are going to single-handedly revive. I mean, we say single-handedly. We're definitely building upon. Other people.
We're helping Amazon at the very least to bring back that R-rated comedy banner.
Yes, exactly. But definitely cinematic release. Get people back in there interested in it all.
I will remind you that the goal of this film was not only to be Oscar-winning, but for it to be a gross-out comedy.
Well, there's people's heads getting splattered by hammers and gross out as much as John Cena peeing his own pants, or Ben Stiller using semen as hair gel. There's lots of ways that you can do this sort of
good point.
stuff.
Good point. All right, time to wrap up this week's episode. Find us on moviefilmstudios.com or .net. They'll go to the.
We've got both of them.
We've got both of them now. We've really. We cashed in that Tarago money.
Yeah, and got the .com, that expensive .com. There is the Mufasa Woodada, the back catalogue of all our previous episodes, which you can go through. I think we've got even links to the trailers that we watched during those films. It's very strange going through that back catalogue and seeing trailers that we watched and discussed and having absolutely no recollection of those films at all.
Yes, so that's all available at moviefilmstudios.com. Give us a like like on various social media platforms, and listen to us on any podcasting platform that you choose to listen on.
You'll probably, I mean, if you have somehow managed to say subscribed for the last 4 years with that episode, you probably noticed that 2 weeks ago we had the Notes from the Studio episode come out, which was me fulfilling the bet where I had to watch Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and then you would have also noticed the Turner Family Tarago.
Yep.
Hopefully those of our subscribers that dropped off somehow hear about us just through the ether. If not, maybe just you'll remind your friends that they're back on the air. The one thing that, again, I know we're wrapping up, and I'm throwing some spanners in the works. In that Notes from the Studio episode, we talked about how we were going to go see Dial of Destiny, and that we were anticipating that it could be an exciting new release in the Indiana Jones franchise, and that we're very excited.
I mean, we were right. It was a new release.
It was a new release
franchise,
yeah, it didn't really live up to...
That might be discussion for Notes
a
from
different
the Studio,
Notes to the Studio?
episode 2.
I'm sure. I mean, I feel as though if we're doing more Notes from the Studios, we should be making more bets which people can fail, and then after Dark Universe films not coming out for 4 years, we finally give in and go, all right, we're going to have to fulfill this end of the bet.
We'll save that for future episodes, I think.
All that remains is to thank you for listening. I've been Isaac.
And I've been AJ.
Roll credits.